In today's video, you are going to learn everything you need to know about the FeiyuTech AK2000S. We're going to balance it, set it up, take a look at some of the specs and features. So before we balance it and set it up, just a couple of words I wanted to share. This has become my go-to gimbal and it's replaced my Zhiyun Weebill Lab. I like this over the Lab because it has a really nice metallic build and this cool rosewood handle. And it just feels a lot more sturdy than my Weebill, and I prefer this touchscreen. Also, there are a lot of ports to connect cables and control the cameras through. And overall, I just feel like it's very ergonomic and it just feels really solid in my hand. So I take this out wherever I go, and I'm impressed by how powerful it is for its size and weight. It weighs about 1 kilo, but can support up to 2.2 kilograms of weight. And that's about 4.5 pounds. And it's really small with this removable tripod. I mean, look how small this thing is. It is tiny. One thing, however, I do prefer on the Weebill Lab is that you have the handle that sticks out like this and you can attach a tripod on it and you can go in inverted mode. With the AK2000S, you can connect a handle like this. However, you have to use a screw to do it. And I find it very impractical to carry an Allen wrench and 3 little tiny screws with me wherever I go. Not only does it take time to set up, but also those screws are going to get lost if I'm out traveling and shooting video. So I would like to see this feature upgraded in the next version of this gimbal to some sort of quick release mechanism where I can just attach this on and off very quickly. So for right now, I'm not going to use this. But the first thing is to get it balanced, so let's do that. And we're gonna reattach the tripod. We're gonna take the base plate that came with it, here, and we're gonna screw it in to the bottom. And pro tip, always use a screwdriver to tighten this thing very tight. You don't want your expensive camera going for a ride when you're running around with the gimbal. And the first thing you want to do is unlock all of these motors. So there are little switches on each motor, and we're going to unlock them. And we're going to make sure that this roll motor is allowing this base plate to be parallel with the table. And once it is, I can lock it so that it's not moving. And you'll know that you have it right when the text on the arm is facing upright. If this was upside down, then you've tilted it the wrong way. So now we're going to take this base plate, and this is an Arca Swiss compatible base plate. And there is a little screw on the front, and that is used for attaching a lens support. I usually find that it's not necessary to use that lens support, but what this screw does is tell you which way you need the base plate to be facing. And we're just gonna plop it in there like that and tighten it. And then we are going to make sure that this latch is on the unlock symbol. And we're going to slide it in like so. Make sure it clicks. And then since I have such a long lens, I have this Sony 24 to 105 millimeter lens, I need to put it as far back as possible. So I'm going to lock that in place. And one little tip is whenever you're balancing a gimbal, you need to make sure that you have the final weight of the gimbal ready to go. So I would normally remove this lens cap and the hood and have all the accessories that I want on the gimbal as I'm balancing it so that you have the final weight. If I were to balance this perfectly and then remove the lens cap, you can see how the balance changes. So for this demonstration, I'm just gonna leave the lens cap on to protect the camera because sometimes these can swing around erratically and you don't wanna hit your lens. But the first thing you wanna do to balance it is point it up towards the ceiling like that. And then you're gonna loosen this screw that's here and you're gonna slide it in such a way that when I let go, the gimbal remains pointing towards the ceiling like that. Step 2 is to point the gimbal forward. And if your gimbal is falling forward like that when I let go, that means there's too much weight on this side of this tilt motor. And if I were to let go and the gimbal's falling that way, that means there's too much weight on this side of this gimbal motor. So what you want to do is envisage the center of gravity of the lens, the camera, and the base plate and align it perfectly with that axis. So right here is actually perfectly balanced because no matter where I point it, it's not moving. And so step 2 is to unlock the tilt motor down here and balance this one. So if I were to let go and the gimbal is falling that way, or if I were to let go here and the gimbal's falling this way, that means there's too much weight on this side of this motor. So I would need to loosen this and adjust accordingly. But right now it's actually pretty well balanced. Actually, you can see that when I put the gimbal to here, that it's falling back this way. So that means I need to put the weight just a tiny bit more to that direction. And when you're making adjustments, you need to make micro adjustments. The tiniest adjustment has an effect. So now when I push it there, it's in place, so that's perfectly balanced. And a little pro tip for balancing gimbals, you'll notice that there are hash marks on all of these arms. And once you have your gimbal perfectly balanced, just note them down in your phone on your notes and note the setup you have. So let's say I have this Sony lens at 35 millimeters. I would write in my camera, in my phone notes, the Sony 35 millimeter lens, and then I would write down the hash marks of all of the arms. So that way, the next time I go to balance it, I just look for the hash marks and I put them there and it's done. The last motor you need to balance is the pan motor, and don't forget this one because it's very important. So just like the other ones, if I push the gimbal perpendicular or parallel to the table rather, and I let go and it's falling this way, that means I need to push more of the weight that way. But actually right now, yeah, see, if I let go here, the gimbal is rotating that way. So that means I need to loosen this arm and push it just a fraction that way. Just a tiny bit, not enough. And this will give you a good arm workout, this motor. See, I went too far now. Went too far again. There, that's perfect, that's balanced. So now I'm gonna tighten it. And we know the gimbal is perfectly balanced when, no matter where I point it, it stays facing that way. So the gimbal remains pointing wherever I face it. That is a perfectly balanced gimbal. If you're getting frustrated while doing this, just take a little breather, set it down, go cook some food, watch some TV, come back, and try it again in a few minutes. I've gotten extremely frustrated trying to balance gimbals over the years. And I found that if you just take a little break and come back and watch this tutorial again, you're gonna get it. And once you learn the first time, it's like riding a bike, you'll never forget. And I can balance gimbals in like 60 seconds now. So you will get it, just remain calm, take a breather if you have to. So now that the gimbal is balanced, we can turn it on by pressing and holding this button on the right side for 3 seconds. And the gimbal will come to life and face forward. So the first mode that we're in is pan follow mode. And what that means is that when I pan to the left and I pan to the right, the camera follows. If I tilt down or I tilt up, you can see that the lens stays facing forward, it's not following. Now, if I go into pan and tilt mode, now when I pan to the right and pan to the left, the gimbal follows. And if I tilt down, you can see that it's following. If I roll from the left to the right, you can see that the gimbal is staying horizontal or level. If I want the gimbal to follow my roll, I need to go on to all follow mode. And that's the icon in the bottom right-hand corner that looks like a spinning neutron. Now, when I roll, the gimbal is following. So follow mode will go in any direction I go. So if I pan, tilt, roll, the gimbal does an amazing job of staying with my gestures. If I want the gimbal to be completely locked off, I tap the lock mode, which is the top left. And no matter what I do, turn, twist, do a full 360 with my hands, go like this, you can see that the gimbal remains facing forward. So this is also a great mode for getting some really cool shots. If I swipe on the screen to the right, I'll have a feature called Inception mode. And this is called vertigo on some other gimbals, but when I click it, you'll see that the gimbal faces upwards. And now I can rotate, for example, counterclockwise or clockwise. And if I were to be walking, I can get a really cool shot, sort of like a spinning world shot that you might have seen in the movie Inception, when they're in the hallway and the whole hallway is spinning. It's sometimes why it's called Inception mode. If I just go back one screen, the gimbal will face forward again. And if for any reason the gimbal, let's say it gets tilted down and you want to reset it, you double tap on the trigger and it'll reset. If you want to do selfie mode, you triple tap and the gimbal will turn around, and I can triple tap again to reset, or double tap rather. The gimbal also does come with cables for every camera from Canon, Sony, and Panasonic. I have my Sony a6500 here. So what I could do if I wanted is connect my camera from the side port to this port that's on the base plate. And then I could use this button to switch between video and photo, stop and record, and change things like the ISO, etc. You can also do that by downloading the FeiyuTech app for your smartphone, which I have right here, and you can connect your gimbal through Bluetooth to the app, and you can also get some cool features. You also have this magic wheel that's on the left, so I can tilt down and tilt up using it. And I can also change the sensitivity in the app or through the settings on the touchscreen. And I can also change this to pan if I wanted to, for example. This is also used for follow focus motor. If you want to buy that separately, you can attach a follow focus to the camera and to the lens, and then you can pull focus using this. But it's very impractical, and I've never seen anyone actually use it successfully. Now, for a couple things that I don't like about this gimbal, one is that you don't have any threaded screw mounts for attaching things like an external microphone or external monitor. You do have a screw mount at the top here, but if you were to add heavy accessories here, it would really throw off the weight and strain the motors. So I don't really like how there are no screws for attaching accessories. The other thing I don't like is that the batteries are internal. So although that is nice and you're not going to lose the batteries at any point, if you are running low on battery, you can't just swap out new batteries. So for my other gimbals, I have two sets of batteries. One is always charging and one is in my gimbal. So when the battery gets low, I just go to the charging batteries and replace them. For this gimbal, that's not possible. However, the positive side is that it only takes about an hour and a half to charge this to the USB-C port. And from my experience, it lasts about 5 hours of heavy shooting. So the battery life isn't so much of an issue, but if you are a very serious videographer or DP, then having only one set of batteries in here internally is going to be a problem for you. So overall, this is an amazing gimbal for its price and weight, and I'd highly recommend it. This is my go-to travel gimbal at the moment. And there are a couple things that can be improved on the next version, but overall, I really like the FeiyuTech AK2000S.